All right, so they want us to take the derivative of this, and they really want us to use chain rule. But I'm going to show you two different ways to do it, and you can tell me which one you think is easier. So first, let's use chain rule. And I guess one way we'll see which is easier is by how many lines it takes. So this will be our chain rule place. And so we're going to start by, well, we have our function. We don't need to copy down the function. But what we do need to do to use the chain rule is we need to rewrite it. We need to see that this fraction means that we have that g of x is negative 7 times 2t minus 3 to the negative 2. And then they want us to use chain rule, so we can do that now. So to do chain rule, we're going to first start with the outside function, so power rule. We're going to bring the negative 2 to the front and say that that's 14 times, keep the inside the same, decrease the power by 1. I guess we're using t instead of x here, that's fine. And then multiply by the derivative of the inside, which is 2. And then once you're here, you would really have to simplify this more. So then you'd end up getting 14 times 2, which is 28, over 2t minus 3 squared. Yeah. And now that's pretty good. But I would honestly maybe suggest doing it another way by just looking at quotient rule. So it looks like we may still have to use the chain rule as well. But that's okay. What I like about the quotient rule is we can just take the derivative right away. And you see what happens with the quotient rule is when you take the derivative of the top, it's just 0. So we just ignore the whole first part. We just start immediately with like the minus derivative of the bottom times the top. So we'll do minus the original top times the derivative of the bottom. So we do have to do some chain rule here. I guess really just like before. Then times 2. And then all of that over that to the fourth now, because that's squared. And I just feel like this is quicker a lot of times, because now we see what happens. We see this 2t minus 3 on top cancels with one of these 2t minus 3's on the bottom. And now we have 2 times negative 7, and the negatives even cancel. So that's 28 over 2t minus 3 cubed. And that's the derivative. And so, I mean, I like that better, because you don't have to rewrite it. You can just kind of go right to it. But it is interesting because the College Board will just ask questions like which function is best to use the chain rule here. And like they would say that it's best to use the chain rule here. Well, I guess you do because you have to use the chain rule anyway. But I think what I'm thinking of is like it was a function like this, and they said you should use the chain rule here. But I really think it's easier to not use the chain rule here if it was this function and to just use the quotient rule. And I think with it is like this too. It's kind of nicer to use the quotient rule instead of rewriting it. But like in math, it's just up to you whichever one you want to do.